Keanu Reeves, child of the wind, fatherless, and with a cow on his acting resume. Before he was the one, he was a confused boy from Beirut with dyslexia and a future in dairy. Long before Keanu Reeves became the symbol of calm sadness, humility, and meme-worthy melancholy, he was just a very confusing child. Born in Beirut, yes, Lebanon, raised in Toronto, given a Hawaiian name, and speaking with a Canadian accent, Keanu's childhood was basically a travel vlog without the sponsorships. He was born September 2nd, 1964, as Keanu Charles Reeves. His name means cool breeze over the mountains in Hawaiian, which sounds like a forecast, but accurately sums up his early life. Quiet, drifting, and a little unpredictable. His mother, Patricia Taylor, was an English costume designer who hung out with rock stars, married multiple times, and wasn't exactly the PTA mom. His father, Samuel Reeves, was an American with a Hawaiian, Chinese, English, Portuguese mix and a tendency to vanish. He disappeared when Keanu was 3, and their last conversation happened when Keanu was 13. Spoiler: it didn't spark a father-son trilogy. After the divorce, young Keanu's life turned into a relocation tour: Australia, New York, Canada. School was rough. He had dyslexia, got kicked out of one high school for an explosive temperament, which, by all accounts, meant he stared silently out the window like a brooding philosopher, and changed 4 schools before he gave up on education entirely. But he had one advantage. He wasn't afraid of the stage. His acting debut, a school play, as a cow, complete with ears and hooves. That same deadpan expression from The Matrix? It probably started right there in the barn. His first paycheck came from a Coca-Cola commercial, where he played a smiling cyclist chugging soda like it was his destiny. He popped up in early Canadian TV shows, looking like a stray John Wick, charming but clearly not on purpose. His stepfather was a theatre director, and his stepmother was a costume designer. Some might call that lucky. But this is Hollywood roulette. Some kids get nannies, others get cow costumes and stage lights. And somehow, despite the absent father, constant relocations, learning disability, and being moved into the acting world, Keanu didn't break. He just got very, very quiet, and with that face, sorrowful but unreadable, he walked right into The Matrix. Keanu Reeves, child of divorce, stage cow, and the saddest Coca-Cola cyclist. Before Keanu Reeves became everyone's internet daddy, justice seeker in The Matrix, and the silent assassin in John Wick, he was, well, let's just say, not your average kid. First of all, he was born in Beirut, Lebanon. Yes, the future star of American action films came with an import label. Even as a child, Keanu was a walking cultural mashup. A Hawaiian name, an English mother, an American father with Chinese, Portuguese, and Hawaiian roots, and he grew up in Toronto. That's not a family. That's a geopolitical cocktail. His father left the family when Keanu was just 3. The boy was raised by his mother, a series of stepdads, and an exhausting parade of home changes. One of those stepfathers happened to be a theatre director, and he was the one who first pulled young Keanu into the orbit of show business. Though let's not glamorize it, Keanu's very first role was playing a cow in a school play. 4 legs, ears, and possibly already that signature melancholic gaze that would later break hearts across the globe. School. Keanu attended it with the enthusiasm of a brick. He suffered from dyslexia, struggled to read, had even more trouble paying attention, and didn't exactly fit the academic mold. One school expelled him for having an explosive temperament, which, we suspect, meant he stared too deeply into the void during math class. He ended up switching 4 schools. Education didn't stick, but hockey sure did. Keanu dreamed of making it to Canada's Olympic team as a goalie, but fate said, "Stop, Neo, you're going the wrong way." And an injury killed the dream. His acting career started the usual way, with a commercial. Keanu landed a spot in a Coca-Cola ad, playing a cheerful cyclist. He drank soda, smiled, and somehow still looked like he was contemplating the meaninglessness of existence. A sugary drink, a bright young face, and eyes filled with longing for a Buddhist monastery. In short, Keanu Reeves's childhood was a perfect storm. A fatherless boy with an accent from nowhere, a learning disorder, hooves on stage, and Zen in his soul by age 12. And yet, out of this beautiful chaos emerged one of the most beloved actors of our time. The moral? Even if you're a school cow right now, don't give up. Keanu Reeves and Johnny Mnemonic, how a script left at his door almost buried his career. Hollywood loves stories about how a lucky twist of fate leads to great success. But sometimes fate leaves not a golden ticket, but a ticking time bomb in the form of a script for Johnny Mnemonic. And if you're Keanu Reeves, of course you pick it up, read it, and think, why not? At least that's how the legend goes. Someone supposedly left the script at Keanu's door. He read it, got interested, and personally called the producers. Naive, kind-hearted Keanu, not yet aware that this piece of paper would drag him into one of the wildest production nightmares of the 90s. It all started innocently enough. Director Robert Longo and writer William Gibson wanted to make a small, low-budget cyberpunk film for $1.5 million, but in 90s Hollywood, such humility was not welcome. The producers said, 1.5? How about 25? And from there, everything spiraled out of control. The project began to swell like a glitched server. Studios meddled, producers came and went, director Longo threatened to quit, but he was chained by contracts and the threat of a massive fine. The script was being rewritten constantly, and according to Gibson, almost nothing of his original story survived. The chaos on set was so intense that even Dolph Lundgren's character was almost completely cut out. His role shrank to the level of a random background myth. Finally, the film was ready. Distributors were hoping for a hit. But what did the audience get? A cyberpunk mess with Keanu, who looked like he wasn't even sure what movie he was in. The film tanked at the box office. $52 million gross against a $26 million budget. Director Robert Longo's career died on the spot, and Keanu received a Golden Raspberry nomination for his performance. And the funniest part? Keanu wasn't even fazed by this disaster. Just a few months later, he starred in A Walk in the Clouds and won back the love of the audience. Meanwhile, Johnny Mnemonic went down in history as the film that tops every 10 worst Keanu Reeves roles list. The moral of the story? Don't pick up what's left at your door, especially if it's a script involving a cybernetic dolphin. The Watcher, a fake signature, and how Keanu Reeves accidentally ended his friend's career in Hollywood. They always say, read the fine print before you sign. But what if you never signed at all? Keanu Reeves, the patron saint of soft-spoken decency, once found himself in such an absurd situation. It deserves its own movie, better than the one he ended up in. Enter the thriller The Watcher, which was originally meant to be a small indie project. It was supposed to be the directorial debut of Keanu's friend, Joe Charbanek, a newcomer with big dreams and stars in his eyes. Keanu agreed to help. Just a small cameo, a few scenes, a friendly gesture to help a buddy get noticed. Nothing major. But Joe had a dream and a contract. When Universal Studios saw Reeves in the paperwork, they suddenly decided to throw in not a few pennies, but $50 million and turn this indie flick into a would-be blockbuster. Guess who landed the lead role? Keanu, completely unexpectedly and against his will. Keanu publicly claimed that he didn't want to star in the film, and that his signature on the contract had been forged. But he never went to court. Why? Because he didn't want to ruin a friendship. That's Keanu for you. Even when you're dragged into a shady movie with fake paperwork, you still show up on set and do your job without making a fuss. Like John Wick, but with fewer guns and no revenge. So what happened? The Watcher turned out to be a forgettable, dull attempt at a thriller. It bombed at the box office. Critics yawned, and audiences forgot it existed by the following week. And friend Joe never directed another film. Ever. His career in cinema ended faster than the opening credits. And Keanu? Keanu just moved on. No drama, no lawsuits, no public meltdowns. Because he's not just an actor, he's the kind of guy who stays polite, even in the dumbest situations. The moral of the story? Never sign anything just as a favor to a friend. Especially if you're Keanu Reeves, and especially if your buddy wants to make a dark thriller on $50 million of studio money. How Keanu Reeves turned down $11 million just to work with the devil. In Hollywood, things like this are rare, like a solar eclipse or an actor who doesn't use Instagram. Keanu Reeves, the eternal mystery man, once turned down $11 million simply because he didn't want to film Speed 2. Yes, the sequel to the blockbuster that made him a superstar. Yes, a paycheck 8 times bigger than the cost of the school bus in the first movie. And still, no. Why? Because Keanu isn't the kind of guy who steps into the same river twice, especially when that river is a sequel where the bus gets replaced with a cruise ship. And no Sandra Bullock, by the way, also missing common sense. Instead of sailing the high seas and cashing checks, Keanu chose to star in The Devil's Advocate. That film had a script that didn't start with explosion, disaster, run. And most importantly, it had Al Pacino. But as is often the case in showbiz, if you want Al Pacino in your film, you better find the money to pay him. The studio said, "Sorry, Keanu, we can't afford him." So Keanu just casually gave up $3 million from his own paycheck to make sure the king of mafia meltdowns said yes. Just a normal Tuesday for Mr. Reeves. The result? Keanu didn't just survive, he came out of it a hero. The Devil's Advocate became a hit, earned $153 million at the box office, turned into a cult classic, especially in Russia, where, fun fact, it's more popular than in the US, and gave us one of Al Pacino's greatest performances, the devil with the charisma of a late-night talk show host. And Keanu, he got respect, not from the press, not from the producers, but from audiences, because not every actor turns down millions for an interesting role, and then pays out of pocket for Pacino like he's reserving a VIP booth in hell. The moral of the story? Sometimes, to get to hell, all you have to do is make the right choice, or at the very least say no to a sequel where the villain is a boat. Keanu Reeves and The Matrix. How to spend $40 million on other people's VFX and not regret it. In Hollywood, money always matters, especially when you're a star getting not just a salary but a fat cut of the box office. But Keanu Reeves, he's a different breed entirely. While most actors fight over 5 extra minutes of screen time and demand a personal trailer with a Japanese memory foam mattress, Keanu drops tens of millions on visual effects. Not even for his own scenes, but for the movie as a whole. Yes, according to legend, during the production of The Matrix, Keanu gave up $30 to $40 million, not to charity, not to buy a mansion in Malibu, but to pay the VFX team. Because, as he allegedly said, they're the ones who make this movie. And who's going to argue, after you dodge bullets in slow motion, it's hard to pretend the costume designer was the star of the show. What kind of person does that? He could have bought an island, taken a break, invested in crypto, opened a horse ranch. But no, he paid the graphics specialists to make The Matrix look flawless. In a world where every third movie shakes the camera and calls it aesthetic, Keanu just whips out his checkbook and says, "Make it beautiful." Now let's be real. Not everything was purely altruistic. Keanu didn't just take a fixed paycheck. He took a percentage of the profits, which meant he had every reason to make sure the film wasn't just good, but a monster hit that made hundreds of millions, and, surprise, he was right. The Matrix pulled in nearly $500 million at the box office, and Keanu reportedly earned over $100 million from his cut. But here's the magic. Even knowing all that, you don't feel angry. You don't think, "Ugh, the rich get richer." You think, "But it's Keanu, He earned it. Because in a world of ego, excess, and red carpet drama, he comes across as someone who simply loves movies and respects the people who make them. The moral of the story: if you want everything to look amazing, pay for it first, and then go dodge bullets in style. Chain reaction to pastries: how Keanu Reeves broke his neck, ate everything in sight, and starred in a flop. Keanu Reeves isn't just about sad eyes and cyberpunk. He's a man who, in the 90s, somehow ended up in a situation where pastries became the main special effect of a film. We're talking, of course, about Chain Reaction, a movie that was supposed to be a science action thriller but turned into a comedy about carbohydrates. So, what happened? Before filming began, Keanu decided to unwind, and by unwind, we mean he played a bit of hockey, like any good Canadian boy. The problem? Normal Canadians don't end up in the hospital afterward with a neck injury. The doctors said, no physical activity, just rest. Keanu said, all right, and headed straight for the bakery. Enter Keanu, the XXL edition. In Chain Reaction, he doesn't look like he's saving the world from nuclear disaster. He looks like he's guarding the last croissant in the warehouse. On set, they jokingly nicknamed him Chain Reaction to Pastries, which honestly is funnier than anything in the film itself. The studio, of course, wanted a blockbuster. They spent $50 million, hoping post-Speed Keanu would blow up the box office again. But audiences didn't see an action star, they saw a tired carb addict, and went to watch something else. At the box office, the film barely broke even, critics groaned, and Keanu received yet another Golden Raspberry nomination. Not because he acted terribly, just because you could see in his eyes that he wanted to go home, grab a blanket, and eat another pastry. And it all started so seriously. The film had conspiracies, scientific discoveries, high-speed chases, but all of that lost its impact next to puffy, weary Keanu. Honestly, it's hard to buy into a world-saving narrative when your lead looks like he missed the complimentary hotel breakfast. The moral of the story? Don't play hockey right before a shoot, especially if you're Keanu Reeves, especially if the film requires running, and especially if there's a bakery nearby. Keanu Reeves and the cult classics. He didn't star in Heat, Starship Troopers, and the missed blockbuster syndrome. While other actors chase cult roles like they're golden tickets, Keanu Reeves seems to be playing his own version of Deal or No Deal, only with the question, maybe I'll just skip this one. Case in point, he almost appeared in Michael Mann's Heat. Yes, that intense, brooding film where Al Pacino and Robert De Niro face off for the first time ever on screen. Keanu could have been in that same frame. But he wasn't. And then there's Paul Verhoeven's Starship Troopers, a film where everything explodes, oozes, screams, and people shoot at giant alien bugs. A cult classic that's been memed to death and quoted endlessly, and Keanu, once again, sat it out. Why? That's where the myths begin. Some say directors were hesitant to cast Keanu, calling him unpredictable. As in, one day he signs a contract, the next he disappears to meditate in the mountains, and by the third day he's in a Japanese whiskey commercial. Others claim Keanu himself wasn't interested. The scripts didn't spark anything, the action felt repetitive, and alien insects just didn't touch his soul. But let's be honest. Turning down these projects is peak Keanu. He's never followed the do it for the fame path. Remember, this is the guy who refused to do a sequel to Speed, isn't afraid of flops, and constantly chooses roles where he either suffers, stays silent, or silently suffers. Heat and Starship Troopers, that's blood, bullets, testosterone, and wide-eyed intensity. That's not really his vibe. Keanu is more like herbal tea, not boiling water with pepper spray. Sure, from a career perspective, those roles might have been huge moves, but Keanu, as always, took his own route. Skipped the cult classics, starred in A Walk in the Clouds, did some brooding, wandered a bit. And then, boom, he landed The Matrix. The moral of the story? If you turn down a movie with Pacino and giant alien bugs, you're either a fool or Keanu Reeves. And as it turns out, in his case, it's pretty much the same thing, but in the best way possible. The Replacements. How Keanu Reeves paid Gene Hackman to be in the movie, and still ended up in a flop. Keanu Reeves is basically Hollywood's anti-celebrity. While other actors demand double pay for selling toilet paper on camera, Keanu literally gives away his millions just to get someone else in the movie. Welcome to the making of The Replacements, a film that was supposed to be a feel-good sports comedy, but ended up as yet another poor Keanu moment. It all started with a studio idea, a light, inspirational movie about football, team spirit, rising from the ashes, and all that jazz. Keanu landed the lead, but the producers needed a second big name, someone who could yell like a drill sergeant and stare so hard the football would fumble itself. Enter Gene Hackman, a legend, a powerhouse, a man whose voice can make a stadium cry. The problem? There wasn't enough money to hire Hackman, and that's when Keanu, in his signature, quietly step in, hand over a check, vanish into the sunset style, said, "Take $3 million from my paycheck and give it to Gene." No one really understood what just happened, but the deal was made. Keanu got poorer, Gene got richer, and the film felt more complete. So, how did it turn out? The movie bombed. With a $50 million budget, it barely scraped by. Audiences didn't care. Critics didn't buy it. The sports comedy was neither here nor there. Not funny enough, not dramatic enough. Even Gene Hackman looked like he just came to stand around for a bit. Keanu, as usual, was sweet, slightly lost, and gave it his all. And yes, he got another Golden Raspberry nomination, because life's not fair, especially in Hollywood. But here's the thing. No one blamed Keanu. Everyone knew. The guy genuinely wanted to make something good. He truly believed this film would be a hit, that the team would win, that good would triumph over evil. Like a hopeful kid in a world full of cynical producers. The moral? Good intentions don't always lead to success. Sometimes you just pay $3 million to sit in a movie theater and think, maybe I shouldn't have. But if you're Keanu, you still smile, because you did it from the heart. Constantine. How Keanu Reeves accidentally replaced Cage, lost Istanbul, and ended up with cigarettes and demons. Once upon a time, Constantine was envisioned as a stylish comic book blockbuster starring Nicolas Cage, featuring action scenes in Istanbul, and probably a weird haircut for the lead character. But then the producers took a long, hard look at the script, glanced at the budget, and basically said, "We can't afford all that. Let's just shoot Keanu in a coat with a cigarette in Los Angeles." And thus began the version of Constantine we know today. Dark, a bit sluggish, but undeniably atmospheric. In this film, Keanu basically plays Neo going through a spiritual crisis. Same coat, same seriousness, but now instead of saving the Matrix, he's soaking in bathtubs and slipping into hell. And yet, it could have been so different. The original plan was for the film to be directed by Tarsem Singh, yes, the guy behind The Cell, with Nicolas Cage in the lead, and a big expensive action sequence in Istanbul, with mosques, markets, and maybe some Turkish intrigue. But the director bailed, permanently. Cage backed out too, either because they cut his fee or he simply changed his mind. That's when Keanu quietly entered the picture, calm, thoughtful, and just a little too tired of everything. The studio panicked and started slashing the budget. The Turkish chase scene got tossed, leaving only a vague sense of heat, and the international scope was reduced to a couple of lines of dialogue. In the end, they shot everything in Los Angeles, no glam, but with soul. And despite comic book purists grumbling, Constantine is supposed to be a blonde Brit from Liverpool, the film turned out to be surprisingly solid. Not a masterpiece, but definitely not a disaster. And most importantly, everyone remembered Keanu, because only he could play a demon-hunting exorcist who doesn't have time for feelings, but always has a sarcastic comeback and a crucifix-shaped shotgun shell to the face. The moral of the story? Sometimes, to make a cult classic, You don't need Cage or Istanbul. All you need is a cigarette, a black coat, and Keanu Reeves quietly doing his job. John Wick. How a former Matrix stuntman gave Keanu Reeves a new life and a whole lot of corpses. By the time John Wick hit theaters, Keanu Reeves had basically become Hollywood's spiritual monk. Sure, he was still acting. Sure, he occasionally showed up in trailers. But his career had slowly drifted into the direct-to-streaming abyss, the kind of cinematic purgatory where films like Daughter of God go straight to iTunes, and even pirates don't bother torrenting them. And then came Chad Stahelski, Keanu's former stunt double from The Matrix, a man who once flew through walls in his place and now decided to direct his first movie. A story about an aging hitman avenging his dog? Sounds like something scribbled on a Snickers wrapper during a sugar crash. But Keanu read it and said, "Let's do it." Originally, the script was written for a retired, older assassin, sort of like Wick Senior Citizen Edition. But Chad looked at Keanu and said, "Why go old when we've got Reeves? He already looks like life has been choking him for the past 20 years. And he wasn't wrong. Keanu slipped into the role like a bullet in a chamber. Brooding, silent, suited up, with the face of a man who just lost his breakfast, his dog, and the will to live. The problem? No money. The budget was only $20 million, so half of John Wick's enemies were played by Chad's stunt buddies, reused in different outfits, less cash, more headshots. And then the film did the impossible. It blew everyone away in 2014. John Wick became a cult hit, Keanu was resurrected, the internet cried tears of joy, and the memes came flooding in. The minimalist style, the aesthetic of pure rage, the flawless fight choreography. None of it was born in a studio boardroom, but in the old training gym of stunt performers. Keanu was a star again. Only this time, he wasn't just a star. He was the patron saint of vengeance, and all of it happened because of the guy who used to fall downstairs in his place. The moral of the story? Sometimes all you need to save your career is a loyal stuntman, a dead dog, and one very, very menacing suit. An $8 million a house Keanu Reeves. Sometimes forgets to come home. To most Hollywood celebrities live in houses that look like boutique hotels. 8 bedrooms, 10 bathrooms, pools shaped like logos, marble walls, and even a meditation room for when they feel too rich. But Keanu Reeves isn't most celebrities. Yes, he bought a house in the Hollywood Hills for $5 to $8 million, but he lives in it, as if he just accidentally wandered in and decided to stay a while. His mansion is modern, sleek, with floor-to-ceiling glass walls, stunning views of Los Angeles, a koi pond, and an infinity pool. Basically, it's everything you'd expect from a multimillionaire, except it doesn't scream for attention. Even the furniture is humble, wooden tables instead of golden thrones, the kind of setup where your grandma could comfortably sip tea without wondering where the bathroom is, because it's not hidden behind a velvet curtain. Some fans have said Keanu's house feels a bit empty. Well, of course it does. The man is rarely home. He's always on set, riding his motorcycle, or sitting on a random park bench with a cup of coffee like he's just your average citizen. While other stars throw wild parties in their mansions, Reeves is more likely to quietly mop the floor himself than hire a DJ. Oh, and let's talk about the fan break-ins. Yes, it happened. One admirer stole a keepsake, another one climbed in through a window and brought flowers, and someone actually showered in Keanu's bathroom. After that, he reluctantly upgraded his security. Not because he was scared, just because, honestly, it's kind of awkward when someone else uses your shower before you do. Here's the irony. Keanu has it all. Money, a mansion, status, and still acts like a guy who just rented a small apartment for the weekend. That Hollywood Hills property isn't a flex. It's a place where he can eat instant noodles in peace and rummage through books without being bothered. The moral? You can live in an $8 million house and still be that guy who thanks the bus driver, because at the end of the day, even the fanciest mansion is just a building. And Keanu? He's still Keanu. To Harleys for One film, how Keanu Reeves outdid Santa Claus and your HR manager. If Hollywood handed out an award for Most Generous Human Who Also Shoots People in Movies, Keanu Reeves would win by a landslide. After filming The Matrix Reloaded, he didn't just hand out thank yous and slap people on the back. No, Keanu went full legend and gave each of his 12 stuntmen a Harley-Davidson motorcycle. Not keychains, not commemorative t-shirts, real, roaring, chrome-shining bikes, each worth about $35,000. And here's the kicker. It wasn't some flashy PR move. He didn't call the press or post it on Instagram. He simply walked up to his stunt team and said something like, "You guys jumped off rooftops and got punched in the face for me. Here are some keys." That's it. No dramatic speech. While other actors fight over trailers, best camera angles, or escape to Bali after wrapping a film, Keanu pulls out Harleys and dishes out gratitude with the sound of revving engines. This story spread through the internet like wildfire. But instead of coughing, it left people smiling. Even the haters had to pause and say, "Okay, that guy's actually pretty awesome." Because, let's be honest, when was the last time you heard of a celebrity giving motorcycles to their stunt crew instead of diamond necklaces to their girlfriends? You can just picture the moment. The stunt guys come out after a long day, bruised, tired, ready to head home, and there's a neat line of 12 Harleys waiting for them. Keanu stands nearby, wearing a black t-shirt and that trademark half-smile, and nobody yells, "Surprise!" Because this isn't a show, it's just Keanu being Keanu. He could have spent that money on another mansion, a yacht, or, who knows, a flying toaster. But he chose people, the ones who literally put their necks on the line to make him look like a superhero. Because Keanu seems to have not just a moral compass, but a hidden department of gratitude inside him that works 24/7. The moral, you can be a superstar, but if you're giving out Harleys to your stuntmen, you're not just cool, you're Keanu Reeves. Rolexes, stuntmen, and the case of the stolen watches. How Keanu Reeves gives away the bling while staying the humble guy. In a world where celebrities compete over who has the loudest ticking luxury watch, Keanu Reeves does things a little differently. He doesn't just wear Rolexes, he gives them away to his stunt crew, and not just any watches but engraved ones. Yes, during the filming of John Wick 4, while bullets were flying on screen, gratitude was flying off screen, in the form of submariners engraved with the John Wick 5. And he didn't give them one to share. Each stuntman got their own. Seconds tick by, and respect for Keanu keeps growing. But the story doesn't end there. In 2023, when Keanu's home was broken into, among the stolen items was his personal collection of watches, and not some knock-off bundle from a sketchy website, but 6 luxury timepieces valued at around $125,000. Someone clearly thought it would be cool to be that guy who stole from John Wick. Good luck, buddy. Hopefully you didn't leave fingerprints. Here's the ironic part. The watches were later found in Chile. Either the thief took a very wrong turn, or he had dreams of selling them to llamas. In any case, the collection was recovered, and the world was once again reminded. Even if you're Keanu Reeves, your Rolex can end up on the other side of the world while you're calmly sipping coffee on your porch. The wildest part, despite all this luxury, Keanu walks around in $20 t-shirts, with hair that looks like it just survived a hurricane, and the face of a man who just heard there's going to be another Matrix sequel. He doesn't flaunt his watches. He uses them to say thank you. That's where the real power lies. Not in flashing your Rolex in selfies, but in giving one to the people who made you look like a legend on screen. Because Keanu gets it. Shooting guns in movies is one thing. Being a good person is something else entirely. The moral? Real watches don't need to be shown off. The best ones are remembered by the people who received them and the man who gave them. The Matrix of Generosity. How Keanu Reeves gave away millions and ended up without a yacht, but with a clear conscience. While other Hollywood actors are busy counting every dollar, Keanu Reeves once woke up, looked at his Matrix paycheck, and apparently said, "Why don't I give all this to the people who actually make the movie work?" And thus began the epic story of the biggest behind-the-scenes bonuses in film history. According to rumors, which, let's be honest, are confirmed by way too many people to ignore, Keanu gave away up to $80 million from his own salary to the special effects team, post-production crew, and other invisible workers in the industry. And we're not talking thanks, here's $20 for coffee. We're talking $1 million each to the people who literally made cinematic magic happen. Someone made Neo bend time and space beautifully. Someone made Trinity's flying scenes look less like a doll on wires. And Keanu paid them not for an Oscar-worthy moment, but just because he wanted to. There was no press conference, no photo ops with an oversized check, no dramatic music playing in the background. He just showed up, gave out the money, and left. Like a superhero without a cape, but with a checkbook. Legend has it, the producers tried to talk him out of it, and the accountants turned pale. But Keanu probably just shrugged and said something like, "It's not like I'm buying islands or collecting Lamborghinis. Meanwhile, those guys over there are performing miracles on a secretary's salary." Yes, while his colleagues were building underground wine cellars and ordering diamond-encrusted toilets, Keanu was building respect. Not real estate portfolios, relationships, not property investments, people investments. And the beautiful part is, he didn't become poorer because of it, but the world definitely became a little richer in kindness. The moral, Keanu Reeves might be the only guy in Hollywood who could say, "I saved the Matrix," and he wouldn't be talking about the storyline, he'd be talking about the crew. Because sometimes the most jaw-dropping scenes aren't made by stars in front of the camera, but by the quiet geniuses who animate the rain at 2 a.m., and if anyone gets that, it's Keanu. Hollywood's Zen introvert, how Keanu Reeves turned loneliness into a superpower. While most Hollywood stars host statement breakfasts featuring lobster, champagne, and 3 personal stylists adjusting their sleeves, Keanu Reeves just sits on a bench downtown and eats a croissant, alone. In a black t-shirt with a cup of coffee in hand, and the face of a man who just woke up and already knows the world's gone crazy, again. Photos of Keanu calmly eating his pastry solo have long become internet legend. The internet even nicknamed him Sad Keanu, although he doesn't actually seem sad. He just isn't faking happiness for the camera. That's exactly the point. While other celebrities offer up fake smiles for paparazzi, Keanu delivers a masterclass in mindfulness that makes every self-help guru look like a beginner. He's not on TikTok, not filming a day in the life from his mansion, not posing with champagne on a yacht. He just lives. With the kind of quiet dignity that feels almost alien in a town built on attention. Keanu is like a Zen monk, a biker, and a former action hero fused into one calm guy with great posture and an intense, thoughtful gaze. He doesn't need a crowd to feel like someone. He is his own company, not because everyone sucks, but because he's genuinely at peace with silence. While the whole industry screams, "Look at me," Keanu doesn't. He can sit in a cafe, on a bench, even on the floor of an airport, and not feel the need to perform. It's not a pose, it's a lifestyle. He's not chasing attention, he gives you a choice. Notice him or don't. And that's exactly why we keep noticing him, again and again. The moral? Being alone isn't a curse, it's a superpower, if you're Keanu Reeves. Because sometimes a guy quietly eating a croissant says more to the world than 100 celebrities strutting down the red carpet in sequins. Keanu and motorcycles. How one introvert made a bike cooler than a Ferrari. Some people collect sports cars. Others have closets full of 300 sneakers. But Keanu Reeves, he's got a garage full of motorcycles, and he doesn't act like a kid who just hit the jackpot. He just shows up, hops on, and rides off. Sometimes at sunset, like a true cinematic drifter. And sometimes to work, to a film set, on a motorcycle, in a suit. Because really, how else would you expect Keanu to travel? His love for motorcycles isn't some rich guy hobby. It's not, "Look what I bought with my Netflix bonus." It's something between a philosophy and a full-blown addiction. He doesn't just ride, he feels the engine, listens to the way the bike breathes, and honestly talks to it like it's a living being. He once even referred to a motorcycle as the perfect woman. Don't worry, he hasn't married it yet. But Keanu didn't stop there. He's not just a rider, he co-founded his own motorcycle brand, Arch Motorcycle. Instead of buying yet another Ducati, he rolled up his sleeves and built his dream bike with a friend. Not for profit, but to create a two-wheeled beast where every part feels like an extension of himself. Arch isn't just a motorcycle, it's a piece of handmade art, built with titanium parts and a price tag that would make most accountants cry. But Keanu doesn't advertise it on TV, he doesn't put it on a pedestal in the middle of his house. He doesn't force guests to say, "Wow." He just rides it and smiles. Sometimes paparazzi catch him. On a bike, hair flying in the wind, sun setting behind him, looking like he rolled straight out of a movie. Not because he's trying to, but because that's genuinely how he lives. The moral, while others buy motorcycles to show off, Keanu builds them himself. Not to prove anything, but because he truly loves the ride. And honestly, it seems like the only time he's not in Hollywood is when he's on two wheels, chasing freedom down the road. Keanu vs. the paparazzi, a Hollywood chase without the special effects. Even a saint can lose patience when he's ambushed outside a clinic by a guy with a camera and a face like he personally produces TMZ. That's exactly how one of the few, and mildly ridiculous, scandals in Keanu Reeves' life began in 2008. The scenario reads like an episode from a mid-season crime drama. Keanu walks out of a medical clinic, gets into his Porsche, and a certain Alison Silver, a professional paparazzo, happens to be standing just a bit too close, way too close. According to his version of events, Keanu started the car, pulled forward, and hit poor Silver, supposedly leaving him with a wrist injury. Hollywood justice kicked in right away. A lawsuit was filed. What for? For reckless driving, for personal injury, for existing as Keanu Reeves, probably all of the above. Now here comes the twist. The case dragged on for almost a year and a half. The plaintiff's team rolled out a lawsuit, backed it up with complaints and medical notes. Keanu's legal team, and Keanu himself, silent and stoic as always, like a monk on a motorcycle, simply responded with good old-fashioned common sense. And the jury, after spending less than an hour deliberating, came back with a verdict. Nah, guys, this isn't serious. While fans started whispering, is this Keanu's fall from grace? The man himself said nothing. He didn't give a dramatic interview. He didn't go on an image-saving tour. He just kept doing what he always does, training, riding motorcycles, and casually wearing suits to comic book stores. The story ended quietly and cleanly. Keanu, as always, didn't fuel the drama, didn't deliver fiery speeches, didn't slip into victim mode. He remained himself, calm, soft-spoken, and very much the kind of guy who wouldn't run someone over for a parking space or for anything, really. The takeaway. When you're Keanu Reeves, even a noisy court case turns into a footnote in your biography. One where truth wins, you walk away in silence, and somehow you're still standing on the side of light, just without the fireworks. Keanu Reeves and the story of how he did not become a father, according to a woman with, let's say, strong opinions. You know, there are two kinds of scandals. The real ones, with drugs, limousines, and Paris Hilton, and the ones that feel like someone spent too much time on conspiracy forums. The story of Keanu Reeves being sued for fatherhood fraud definitely belongs in the second category. It's like suing the wind for not becoming president. So the year is 2009. A Canadian woman named Karen Sala comes out of the shadows and claims that Keanu is not just the father of one, but several of her children. And not just that. She insists that he allegedly used hypnosis to make her believe they had a romantic relationship. Somewhere in the background, the entire Matrix production team is nervously sweating. According to her, she and Keanu dated in their youth, and now she wants $150 million in child support and an extra $3 million for emotional damages. You know, because Keanu, as it turns out, was just out there minding his own business, not even aware Karen existed. Keanu reacted in his usual Zen master fashion, calmly, with no drama. He simply took a DNA test, which 100% confirmed he was not related to any of her children. Case closed. The public yawned, the tabloids shrugged, and Keanu went back to sipping his coffee and being a good guy. But the funniest part of this entire tale isn't even the lawsuit itself. It's the way Keanu handled the whole situation. No counter-lawsuits, no angry statements, no demands for damages. Just a quiet visit to the lab, some science-backed clarity, and a classy exit. The moral of the story? When you're Keanu Reeves, even if someone accuses you of hypnosis, surprise fatherhood, and ruining lives with a John Wick glare, you still walk away a gentleman, and DNA. Turns out it makes for the best punchline of the year. Hollywood's Night at the Museum, when strange women broke into Keanu Reeves's house. Usually, when obsessed fans break into celebrity homes, they're there to swipe a t-shirt, take a selfie, or, in the worst case, snatch a tiny Oscar. But with Keanu Reeves, things, as always, unfold in a special, slightly surreal way. His home in the Hollywood Hills became the stage for a psychedelic theater of absurdity, starring 2 women and 1 very confused bathtub. Let's rewind to 2014. It's early morning, and Keanu wakes up to some strange noises. He walks into his living room and, surprise, there's a woman, just standing there inside his house. She's not stealing anything, not screaming, not holding a knife, just standing, as if she's waiting for someone to serve her tea. Keanu, being the monk-like gentleman he is, calmly talked to her and called the police, as if she was an Airbnb guest who forgot her checkout time. The woman was taken for psychiatric evaluation a few days later. Episode 2. A new lady, a new act. This one breaks in, strips down, takes a shower, and then runs herself a bath. Some call it manic behavior, but die-hard Matrix fans might argue she was simply trying to wash away the illusion of reality. Keanu's staff, understandably shocked, calls the police again, and this second nude intruder is also escorted away for mental health assessment. And here's the twist. Keanu once again says nothing. No emotional interviews, no dramatic headlines like, "I fear for my life," no accusatory posts blaming half of humanity. He just quietly boosts his home security, adds more cameras, and continues riding his motorcycle to the nearest indie bookstore like nothing ever happened. The moral of the story? While other celebrities throw fits over a wrinkle in their cappuccino foam, people literally break into Keanu Reeves's home looking for a hot shower and possibly enlightenment, and he responds with the serenity of a Buddhist monk. Maybe it's because he's seen everything, on screen and off, or maybe it's just because he's Keanu, and that explains a lot. The Matrix glitched. How Keanu Reeves ended up in a legal battle over a photographer's wrist. When you're Keanu Reeves, the icon of calm, humility, and the eternal black t-shirt, you don't expect to end up in headlines with words like lawsuit, accident, and paparazzo with a wrist injury. But in 2008, life went off script. It all started in true Hollywood fashion. Keanu walks out of a medical center in Los Angeles, gets into his Porsche, and prepares to drive away. And then, like clockwork, Alison Silver appears, a photographer on the hunt for celebrity snapshots. He claimed he was standing near the car when Keanu suddenly hit the gas, knocked him over, and left him with, and we quote, excruciating pain in his wrist. Of course, the wrist, the most sacred tool of any paparazzo, practically the Renaissance painter's brush of modern fame-chasing. Silver sued the actor, demanding damages, so far pretty standard. But then the court proceedings began to sound more like a sitcom. There were curious inconsistencies. Silver wasn't sure exactly where he had been standing. The surveillance footage was a little blurry, and his injury suspiciously matched a fall he'd had on his skateboard a week prior. And what did Keanu do? In true Zen master fashion, he appeared in court without a fuss, didn't stir up drama, smiled, said maybe 3 sentences total, and filed no countersuit. Not a single bitter word about how the whole thing might have been a setup. He just politely defended his innocence. His lawyers did their job. The jury yawned. And after just 45 minutes of deliberation, they returned with a verdict. Reeves was not at fault. The internet moved on quickly from Silver. And Keanu? Once again, he was the heroic, quiet guy who manages to stay composed even when life throws him into the most absurd situations, the complete opposite of a reality TV diva having a meltdown over oat milk. The takeaway? Even when someone tries to pull you into a cheap courtroom spectacle, being Keanu means staying calm, staying kind, and still winning, even if for a moment reality looked like it was starting to glitch. Money, no, thanks. How Keanu Reeves gave away his paychecks and became Hollywood's saint. When it comes to money in Hollywood, most stars reach for their calculator faster than they reach for a script. But not Keanu. This man is a rare breed, someone who makes money but doesn't see it as the meaning of life, and sometimes gives it away like he's on a personal mission to outshine the Red Cross. Let's start with The Matrix. Keanu earned about $250 million from the franchise. Impressive? Absolutely. But what's even more impressive is that he voluntarily gave away around $70 million of it to the special effects artists and makeup team, the people who worked behind the scenes. He literally said, "These guys are the ones who made the movie what you love." Sorry, but who even does that? Keanu does. And then there were the motorcycles. When The Matrix wrapped filming, Keanu gifted every stuntman a Harley-Davidson motorcycle. Not a thanks, bro, not a LinkedIn endorsement, but an actual roaring steel beast. Because, as he said, they risked their lives, and he just ran around in a black coat. But that's not all. Keanu is famously known for taking the subway, standing in line like a regular mortal, and willingly giving up his own salary for charity or to help out a crew he respects. No press conference, no headlines, no flashing lights. Just because he thinks it's the right thing to do. And here's the question everyone ends up asking. Is he a saint, or just so genuinely normal that it feels abnormal? In a world where celebrities demand private elevators and room-temperature unicorn water, Keanu shows up to set in jeans, smiles at the lighting guys, and turns down tens of millions of dollars if they don't feel right to him. The takeaway? While others are buying their 4th villa in the Maldives, Keanu Reeves is quietly making the world a better place. No ego, no circus, just heart. And maybe that's why people love him. Not just fans, but even those who don't watch movies at all. The old-school monk of Hollywood. Why Keanu Reeves lives like it's still 1995. In a world where celebrities buy private jets for their dogs, build mirror-clad mansions in the desert, and collect bored monkey NFTs, Keanu Reeves lives as if all of it is just a glitch in the Matrix. He doesn't shout about himself, doesn't charge for breathing the same air, and doesn't flash golden teeth on TikTok. He just lives. In his own way, Keanu doesn't have a 23-bedroom mansion with platinum petal ceilings. What he does have is a regular house in the Hollywood Hills, where he lives alone. No housekeepers, no security guards, no parade of personal trainers. Want to spot Keanu? Look for him in a coffee shop line, riding the subway, or cruising on a motorcycle. Same black helmet and coat a la Neo, just without the cameras and makeup. He doesn't hand out interviews left and right, and you won't find him scrolling through social media. Yes, Keanu Reeves doesn't have an Instagram account. In 2025, that sounds like he consciously chose to exist on the internet only in meme form, and that's more than enough for him. His lifestyle? Minimalism, but without trying too hard. He doesn't buy another Ferrari to match his mood, doesn't walk around in $20,000 sneakers, and doesn't compete for the biggest square footage on a yacht. He prefers a motorcycle, a book, a cup of coffee, and silence. Maybe some sushi alone in a quiet Japanese restaurant. There's even a story that he rented an apartment in a hotel for years and commuted to work on set like a regular office worker, not because he was broke, but simply because he didn't want the hassle of choosing a house. Who needs a mansion when you can read a comic and go for a ride? The takeaway. While all of Hollywood fights for likes and compares heated pools, Keanu Reeves proves that the quieter you live, the louder people talk about you. He's not playing a role. He just stayed normal, and in today's world, that's already a superpower.